Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you. The words came out of Victoria Sterling's mouth with the same contempt she reserved for trash on the sidewalk. The 31-year-old CEO of Sterling Aviation looked down at the scruffy-looking black man who had offered to fly her corporate helicopter. It was Monday morning at the Skyscraper Helport in Chicago, and Victoria urgently needed to get to Detroit to close a $50 million deal. Her private pilot had canceled at the last minute due to a medical emergency, and all the replacements in the city were unavailable. Marcus Thompson, 35, was only there because he had gone up to the terrace looking for a quiet place to eat the sandwich he had gotten at the shelter. His clothes were a strange mix of hand-me-downs, a faded military jacket over a torn shirt and dirty pants. His curly hair was unkempt, and his unshaven face completed the look of someone society had forgotten. "Miss, I can fly this helicopter," Marcus had said with a calmness that contrasted with his appearance. His voice was firm, without submission or desperation, just a simple statement of fact. Victoria's two assistants burst into cruel laughter. "Man, you probably don't even know how to drive a car properly," scoffed James, the senior assistant, adjusting his Hermes tie. "How about going to look for some coins in the fountain down there?" Victoria crossed her arms, her Louboutin heels clicking impatiently on the concrete. She had inherited Sterling Aviation from her father and turned the company into a national powerhouse. People like Marcus were invisible to her urban obstacles that occasionally got in her perfect way. "Look, I don't know what kind of fantasy you're living," Victoria said, her voice dripping with venom. "But this is an $8 million helicopter, not a video game. You should be looking for a job or, I don't know, taking a shower." Marcus kept his gaze fixed on her. No anger visible, just a disturbing serenity. "I can fly," he repeated as if he hadn't heard the insults. The situation was absurd. Victoria was desperate. The contract in Detroit couldn't wait, and traffic would make it impossible to get there on time. But accept help from a homeless man. The idea was ridiculous to the point of being offensive. "You know what?" Victoria smiled wickedly, deciding to have some fun with the situation. "If you can get this helicopter off the ground and get me to Detroit safe and sound, I'll marry you. How about it? Let's see if you're as confident as you seem." James and Rebecca, the junior assistant, laughed even louder. The proposal was so absurd that Victoria knew there was no risk. It was just a cruel way to humiliate the man before calling security. Marcus nodded once without smiling, without showing any emotion. "I accept," he said simply, walking toward the helicopter. For a second, Victoria felt something strange, a chill she couldn't explain. There was something about Marcus's posture, the way he moved toward the aircraft, that didn't fit with the image of a desperate homeless man. When Marcus opened the cockpit door and sat down in the pilot's seat as if it were his second home, Victoria realized that perhaps she had underestimated something. His hands touched the controls with a familiarity that made her stomach churn. "He's really going to try to fly," Rebecca whispered, suddenly less confident. The helicopter's engine roared to life with a precision that silenced everyone on the terrace. Marcus hadn't hesitated for a second when starting the machine. Every movement was fluid, automatic, professional. Victoria looked at the man she had mocked seconds before, now commanding an aircraft worth more than most houses. Something in his eyes, something she had missed amid her prejudice and arrogance, shone with an intensity that made her realize a disturbing truth. She had no idea who this man really was. If you're enjoying this twist in the story and want to find out who Marcus really is and how Victoria will react when she discovers the truth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because what's coming next will leave you speechless. The helicopter took off with a smoothness that left Victoria speechless. There was no hesitation, no technical error, no disaster that she secretly hoped for to confirm her prejudices. Marcus flew with the precision of someone who was born to do it. As they flew over Chicago toward Detroit, Victoria watched his every move through the reflection in the glass. His hands on the controls were steady, his eyes constantly scanned the instruments, and his posture was that of an absolute professional. It was impossible. Homeless people didn't know how to fly $8 million helicopters. "Where the hell did you learn to do this?" Victoria shouted over the noise of the engine, her voice laden with irritation and disbelief. Marcus kept his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Places a person like you would never need to know about," he replied without looking at her. The answer irritated her even more. How dare he be evasive with her? Victoria Sterling did not accept mysteries, especially from people she considered inferior. She picked up the phone and dialed James. I want you to find out everything about this guy. Full name, background, where he lives, everything, she ordered, keeping her voice low, but not low enough. And when I get back, I want the building security reinforced. I don't want any more intruders on my terrace. Marcus heard every word, but his expression didn't change. At 35, he had faced situations much worse than the arrogance of a spoiled CEO. What Victoria didn't know was that he had spent the last 6 months watching her from afar. Marcus wasn't on that terrace by chance. He had studied Victoria's routine, knew about the contract with Detroit, knew her dependence on the helicopter to escape traffic. He had waited patiently for an opportunity like this. 3 years ago, Marcus had been Captain Marcus Thompson, chief pilot of the Chicago Emergency Medical Transport Unit. He flew rescue missions, transported critical patients, and saved lives every day. His reputation was impeccable until the night it all fell apart. Victoria Sterling had been in that medical helicopter as a VIP patient after a car accident. She was conscious, only superficially injured, but insisted on being treated as a top priority. Meanwhile, an 8-year-old child from a poor community was waiting in line, rapidly losing blood after being hit by a car. Marcus had made the correct medical decision to prioritize the dying child. Victoria exploded in rage, screaming about who she was, threatening lawsuits, demanding immediate treatment. When Marcus refused to change the medical priority order, she made a phone call. 2 weeks later, Marcus was fired on fabricated allegations of inappropriate conduct. Victoria had used her connections to destroy not only his job, but his entire reputation. No hospital would hire him. His pilot's license was suspended during an investigation that dragged on for months. His wife, Camilla, couldn't take the financial pressure and the judgmental looks. She left him, taking their 6-year-old daughter, Sophia, with her. "I can't live married to a man who can't even hold down a job," were her last words before she moved to another state. Marcus lost everything. His career, his family, his home, his dignity. He spent 2 years living on the streets, a few months in shelters, working odd jobs when he could. But throughout that time, one thing kept his spirit alive: his thirst for justice. He had spent months planning, researching, preparing. Victoria thought he was invisible, just another social problem she could ignore. She had no idea she was sitting next to the man whose life she had destroyed out of pure caprice and arrogance. "We're almost there," Marcus announced, beginning his descent toward the heliport in Detroit. Victoria looked out the window and saw the corporation's building approaching. Her stomach tightened, not from fear of landing, but from the disturbing realization that Marcus was not what he seemed. The way he handled the controls, his professional calm, his absolute confidence. That wasn't something you could learn by watching YouTube. The landing was perfect, smooth as silk, precise to the centimeter. Victoria stepped out of the helicopter with wobbly legs, not from the flight, but from the realization that she had completely underestimated the situation. "Miss Sterling," Marcus said, turning off the engine and looking directly at her for the first time during the flight. "A promise is a promise." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in that look, not just confidence but knowledge, as if he knew something she didn't, as if this whole encounter had been orchestrated. "You're crazy if you think I'm going to marry you," Victoria spat, trying to regain her commanding posture. That was just a cruel joke. "Don't people like you understand sarcasm?" Marcus smiled for the first time since they had met. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who was 3 steps ahead in the game. "Oh, I understand sarcasm perfectly, Miss Sterling. Just as I understand verbal contracts, audio recordings, and the importance of witnesses," he said, taking a small digital recorder out of his jacket pocket. "James and Rebecca heard your proposal very clearly." Victoria's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't dare." "A businesswoman like you surely understands the value of a committed word," Marcus continued, putting the recorder away. "Especially when there are so many people interested in knowing how the great Victoria Sterling treats her public promises." Victoria realized she had fallen into a trap, but she still couldn't fully understand what was happening. Who was this man? Why did he know exactly which buttons to push to leave her with no way out? What Victoria didn't know was that this wasn't just revenge. It was the first move in a meticulously crafted plan by someone she had completely forgotten she had destroyed. And if you think this story of justice is already intense, wait until you find out who Marcus really was and why he chose that exact moment to reappear in her life. Victoria arrived at the office in Detroit, determined to find out who the hell Marcus Thompson was. As she closed the $1 million deal with apparent ease, her mind was swirling with questions that deeply irritated her. How had a homeless man flown better than some of her hired pilots? As soon as she signed the documents, she called James. "I want a full report on that guy in an hour. First name, last name, criminal history, everything. And call an emergency meeting for when I get back." On the other end of the line, James was sweating cold. "Miss Sterling, we've already tried to investigate, but it's strange. It's as if he didn't exist before 2021. We can't find any employment records, credit history, nothing. It's as if he appeared out of thin air." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. People didn't just appear out of thin air, especially not people with elite military piloting skills. Keep looking. Scour every database, every file. This man is hiding something. Meanwhile, Marcus was on the terrace of the building in Chicago, not cleaning the helicopter as Victoria had assumed, but photographing every component in detail with a hidden professional camera. Every screw, every serial number, every maintenance mark. He wasn't there by chance. There was a very specific purpose behind every move. His phone vibrated. A text message. "Documents ready. Meeting at 8 p.m. at the usual place." Marcus smiled. After 3 years of meticulous planning, every piece was finally falling into place. Victoria Sterling had made the fatal mistake he had hoped for, completely underestimating him. The person identified as it was Anna Rodriguez, a former investigator for the Medical Ethics Commission who had been fired for trying to expose the corruption scheme that destroyed Marcus's career. She had spent the last 3 years gathering evidence, following the money and documenting every move of the influence machine that Victoria ran. That night, Marcus arrived at the small cafe on the outskirts of town where Anna was waiting for him with a folder full of documents. "I got everything," she said, pushing the folder across the table. "The bank records, the transactions, the recorded phone calls, everything you needed to prove that she orchestrated your dismissal through bribery and blackmail." Marcus opened the folder, and his eyes lit up. There were 3 years of meticulous investigation, proof of bank transfers from Sterling Aviation to members of the hospital committee, recordings of phone conversations where Victoria clearly instructed on how to fabricate evidence against him, and internal emails discussing how to eliminate the Thompson problem. "But that's just the beginning," Anna continued, pulling out a second envelope. "I discovered that you weren't the only victim. She did this to 7 other professionals in the last 5 years. Doctors, pilots, engineers, anyone who dared to contradict her or whom she saw as a threat." Marcus took a deep breath. For years he had blamed himself for that fateful night at the hospital. He had questioned whether he had really made the right decision in prioritizing the child over Victoria. Now, seeing the extent of her systematic cruelty, he realized it had not been an error in judgment. It had been pure malice. "There's more," Anna said, opening her laptop. "I got access to Sterling Aviation's internal records. Guess what? The helicopter you flew today. It's been overdue for maintenance for 3 months. The safety certificates were forged." Marcus swallowed hard. "Are you saying she put me in a dangerous aircraft? Not just you. She's been cutting maintenance costs for years, falsifying safety documents and putting passengers at risk to increase profits. If something had gone wrong today, you would have been blamed for the accident. It was a perfect situation for her. Either you died trying or you crashed and was sued for negligence." The revelation hit Marcus like a punch in the stomach. Victoria hadn't just destroyed his life years ago. She had planned to finish the job that morning. The cruel marriage proposal hadn't been mere humiliation. It had been a calculated attempt at murder disguised as a joke. "She really thought I would die trying to fly," Marcus muttered, the reality of the situation finally crystallizing. Anna nodded grimly. "The technicians who falsified the documents have already agreed to testify. They are willing to testify that Victoria personally ordered them to ignore safety protocols." Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the strange feeling he had when he started the helicopter's engine. Some instruments had faltered momentarily, small signs that something was not right. His military experience had saved him. He had automatically compensated for the irregularities that would have caused a fatal accident for any less experienced pilot. "What's the next step?" Marcus asked, his voice laden with cold determination. Anna smiled for the first time in hours. "Tomorrow, Victoria will find out that recording you made isn't just a joke. The federal prosecutor received an anonymous copy along with all these documents in the press. Well, let's just say that a highly respected investigative journalist is very interested in the story of how a CEO tried to kill a war hero to silence him." Marcus nodded slowly in the wedding. "Oh, about that." Anna laughed, picking up another document. "I consulted 3 lawyers who specialize in contracts. A public proposal accepted verbally in the presence of witnesses and with a recording. Legally speaking, she really committed herself. And considering that you fulfilled your part of the agreement, are you saying I can legally force her to comply? Better than that? I can sue for breach of contract and emotional distress, the amount of damages. Well, for a war hero publicly humiliated by a billionaire CEO, we're talking millions." Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing the irony of the situation. Victoria, in her supreme arrogance, had created the noose for her own hanging. The cruel joke about marriage had become a legal contract. The disguised attempt at murder had been documented. The years of corruption and forgery were about to come to light. But the sweetest part of all the revenge would not be the money or the public exposure. It would be the moment Victoria realized that the homeless man she had tried to kill was the same man whose life she had destroyed 3 years earlier, and that he had spent all this time meticulously preparing her downfall. "One last thing," Marcus said, picking up his phone. "She's going to try to investigate me. She's probably already trying." Anna smiled mischievously. "Let her try. The records she'll find are exactly the ones we prepared. Marcus Thompson, the invisible homeless man with no past, no connections. What she doesn't know is that Captain Marcus Thompson was officially declared dead in combat 3 years ago, at least in the record she can access, and when she finds out the truth. By the time she discovers that the ghost she tried to kill today is the same man she destroyed in the past, it will be too late. By then, we'll be all over the news in every courtroom, and she'll be trying to explain to the whole world why she tried to murder a war hero twice." Marcus carefully put the documents away. For the first time in 3 years, he felt that Camilla and Sophia could be proud of him again, not just for surviving, but for turning his apparent destruction into the foundation of perfect justice. While Victoria slept peacefully in her luxurious penthouse, convinced that she had humiliated yet another loser, she had no idea that she had just awakened a ghost she herself had created. A ghost who had spent 3 years meticulously planning not only his revenge, but the complete destruction of everything she had built on lies and cruelty. Victoria woke up the next morning to 17 missed calls from James and a strange feeling in her stomach. Still in her bathrobe, she answered the phone irritably. "James? What the hell? Miss Sterling. We need to talk now." James' voice was in a complete panic. "There's an investigative reporter downstairs wanting a statement about attempted murder and forgery of security documents, and there's a CNN van parked in front of the building." Victoria felt her blood run cold. "What the hell are you talking about?" "And there's more. The federal prosecutor just called. They want you at their office at 2 p.m. today to testify about a case of systematic corruption involving bribery of medical authorities." The phone slipped from Victoria's hands and fell to the floor. She rushed to the television and turned on the news channel. The first story to appear showed a photo of her next to Marcus with a headline, "CEO attempted to murder war hero who saved child instead of prioritizing her in medical emergency." The reporter continued, "Documents obtained exclusively by this station reveal a systematic pattern of corruption at Sterling Aviation, including falsification of safety certificates and attempted murder disguised as public humiliation against Captain Marcus Thompson, a decorated veteran who Victoria turned off the TV, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Captain Marcus Thompson. The name echoed in her mind like a hammer. She vaguely remembered that episode at the hospital 3 years ago. An arrogant medical pilot who had dared to prioritize her over some random child. Her phone rang again. It was Rebecca, her junior assistant, crying, "Miss Sterling, my family is calling me. I'm all over the news as an accomplice to attempted murder. My father is a pastor. This is destroying our reputation." Victoria hung up and immediately called her private lawyer. His secretary answered with a coldness she had never heard before. "Mr. Richardson is in a meeting and has asked me to inform you that he can no longer represent you due to a conflict of interest." Conflict of interest. Victoria realized she was being abandoned by her own allies as the ship sank. She quickly got dressed and rushed to the office, finding a crowd of reporters at the entrance. She managed to get in through the back, but the office was in total chaos. Shares have plummeted 67% in the last 2 hours, reported the CFO, pale as a ghost. 3 major contracts have been canceled, including the one in Detroit. And there's more. The board of directors has called an emergency meeting for 4:00 p.m. today. Victoria entered her office and found a folder on her desk. Inside were copies of all the documents Anna had collected, bank transfers, recordings of phone conversations, internal emails, all meticulously organized. A handwritten note read, "Compliments from Captain Marcus Thompson. P.S. A promise is a promise." She opened her laptop and saw that her inbox was flooded with resignation emails, employees, partners, board members, all jumping ship. But the email that hit her hardest was from her own sister, Victoria. "I can no longer defend the indefensible. You need professional help." At 2 p.m., Victoria was sitting in a gray room in the federal building, surrounded by prosecutors who looked like sharks smelling blood. "Miss Sterling, Mr. Marcus Thompson has provided us with substantial evidence that you orchestrated his dismissal through bribery and false accusations in 2021. Furthermore, there is evidence that you deliberately endangered his life yesterday by using an aircraft that was past its maintenance date." "That's ridiculous," Victoria stammered, but her voice sounded weak, even to herself. The lead prosecutor placed a recording on the table. "This is the phone conversation you had with Dr. Wilson from the hospital committee in March 2021. He pressed play." Victoria's unmistakably arrogant voice filled the room. "Listen, Wilson, this pilot needs to disappear. He humiliated me publicly. I don't care how you do it, but I want him out of the medical system for good. Sterling Aviation makes substantial donations to this hospital." Victoria felt nausea rising in her throat. She had completely forgotten about that call, and this continued. "The prosecutor is the bank transfer of $85,000 from Sterling Aviation to an offshore account controlled by Dr. Wilson 3 days after Captain Thompson's dismissal. At 4 p.m., Victoria faced the board of directors, including her own father, Roger Sterling, who looked at her with a mixture of disappointment and horror. "Victoria, by unanimous vote, you are being removed from all executive positions at Sterling Aviation, effective immediately. Dad, you can't." "I can, and I am," Roger said, his voice cutting like ice. "You have not only destroyed our family reputation, but turned our company into a criminal organization. The Sterling name took decades to build, and you destroyed it in one day." That night, Victoria sat alone in her apartment, watching her life unravel on television. The news showed Marcus being interviewed impeccable in a military dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. Captain Thompson asked the reporter, "How do you feel knowing that Victoria Sterling tried to kill you yesterday?" Marcus replied with the same unsettling calm he had shown on the terrace. "Justice delayed is not justice denied. The truth always finds a way to reveal itself. My only concern now is to ensure that no other professional suffers what I suffered for simply doing their job with integrity." The camera focused on Marcus's medals. As the reporter explained, Captain Thompson received the Medal of Valor for saving 6 soldiers under enemy fire in Afghanistan. He was unfairly dismissed for prioritizing a child in critical condition over a CEO who had suffered only superficial injuries. Victoria turned off the TV when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, Victoria." Marcus's calm voice made her blood run cold. "I imagine you're watching the news." "What do you want?" she whispered. "I want you to understand something that people like you never learn," Marcus said, his voice laden with devastating calm. "When you destroy someone's life on a whim, you're not just attacking a person, you're attacking all the values that person represents. I represented medical integrity. You destroyed that out of wounded pride." Victoria swallowed hard. I didn't remember." "Of course you didn't remember," Marcus continued. "To you, I was invisible, just like hundreds of other people you've trampled on over the years. But do you know what the difference is between us, Victoria? When I fell, I learned to get back up. When you fall, and you are falling now, you don't have that ability." "You planned all of this," Victoria realized, the reality finally crystallizing. "I planned justice," Marcus corrected. "Revenge would be to let you live in ignorance. Justice is ensuring that you face the consequences of your actions and that others don't suffer what I suffered. As Victoria tried to process the magnitude of the devastation that had befallen her life in less than 24 hours, she still didn't know that this was only the beginning. Because a man who spent 3 years meticulously planning the downfall of his tormentor doesn't stop at public exposure and imprisonment. He goes all the way ensuring that the lesson is permanent and unforgettable. 6 months later, Marcus was on the same terrace where it all began. But now, as CEO of Thompson Aviation Services, a company he founded with $1 million settlement, Victoria was forced to pay. The Detroit contract was transferred to him along with 3 other major clients who abandoned Sterling Aviation. Victoria, she was bankrupt, criminally prosecuted, and working as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic, the only job she could get after her criminal record for attempted murder and corruption. Her father publicly downed her, and she lived in a 1-bedroom apartment far from the spotlight she once loved. "Daddy, are you going on TV today?" asked Sophia, now 9, visiting Marcus at his office. She had returned to his life after Camilla saw on the news who her ex-husband really was, a hero she had abandoned in his hour of need. "Yes, I am, Princess. I'm going to tell them how I turned the worst thing that ever happened to me into the best opportunity of my life." Marcus looked out the office window. Justice had been served not only through the courts, but through success built on the rubble of others' cruelty. Victoria had tried to bury him twice, and twice he had risen stronger. True revenge was not to destroy her. It was proving that greatness does not depend on skin color, social status, or the size of one's bank account. It depends on character, resilience, and the ability to turn injustice into fuel for success. Today, when young black pilots visit his company, Marcus always repeats the same lesson. When someone tries to diminish you, remember that they are only revealing their own fear of your greatness. Use that energy to fly even higher. The best revenge against those who try to destroy you is not to retaliate. It's to achieve success they could never imagine. If this story of overcoming adversity has touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that justice always finds a way to fly higher than prejudice.